We've spent over 10 years on air, shaping a generation of action motorsports, and now we're changing the game again. The best motorsports, the best action sports, and the best of pop culture with some epic guests thrown in. I am Jim Beaver, and this is the General Tire Jim Beaver Show with Brittany Cardone. Grab the popcorn. Welcome to this week's General Tire Jim Beaver Show. This is an episode I wish I never would have had to do. Obviously, if you're listening to the show, you follow motorsports, you know that we lost Ken Block, and we also lost Robbie Pierce. Going to be doing tributes to both of them. Both close friends of mine, both have played a massive, massive role in my career. This episode specifically talking about Ken Block. I've been fortunate enough to interview Ken countless times. One of the few people that had total access to Ken Block. Got to know Ken behind the scenes, got to know his family, his kids, the team. They treated me as if I was one of their own. Ken invited me up to Park City to his shop to do our 100th episode. When I launched this show, I guess in its previous format, the Down and Dirty Show, I think my third or fourth guest ever was Ken Block. And when you launch a new show and you get somebody as big as Ken Block, it immediately sends you into the stratosphere. That was 12 years ago. Obviously, this show's blown up since then. I've been on TV. I've had amazing programs, but a lot of this goes back to the start. And I've been very open with I owe my career to Ken Block, and I truly do. And I'm so thankful. Last year I sent Ken a letter and told him as much. And in typical Ken fashion, he completely played it off. Took zero credit for anything. But at least I was able to tell him that I owed my career to him, and I'm so thankful that I did that. You hear, I've seen Sal Masekela, Jason Ellis all say, what Ken did for them, and they wouldn't have careers without him, and very much in the same vote, and Ken realized, and he was the most unarrogant, humble person behind the scenes you'll ever meet, but he realized anybody that's in Ken's orbit was going to be elevated by default, and what Ken did for me month one of this show, very first guest ever for Project Action, having me out to his place for the 100th anniversary or the 100th episode of the show, going back to when I used to do Red Bull Global Rallycross, Rally America. Nobody else could get the interviews I got, and it was because I was personal friends with Ken, and I was invited into the paddock and his RV and his hauler, and we'd talk. We do the rally thing, but the thing I loved about Ken was he loved not talking about race cars. And everybody knows Ken as automotive influencer Ken, the biggest name in the world when it comes to motorsports and cars and things like that. And the Ken that I knew, he loved to talk about documentaries. He loved to debate politics. He loved to talk about religion. It was amazing the intellectual that he was, and obviously he was a creative. And I've modeled my career to an extent off of Ken. You see a lot of what I've done and the way I pursued things, and the content and the media, and being able to guarantee ROI to partners without ever racing a race. My career is case in point on a very small scale, Ken Block. To the point where I always looked at social media platforms. Everybody go, oh, you got to be on here, you got to be on there, you got to be on here, you got to be on there. And I'd always go, is Ken Block there? If Ken's there, we need to be there. If Ken's not, I'm not interested in it. Because Ken was that smart, and he kind of read trends, knew what was going on, things like that. Obviously his daughter Leah has been blowing up, a phenomenal talent. His wife Lucy's actually a hell of a race car driver, and she'll never admit it. And I've interviewed Lucy countless times during Rally America and things like that, and just absolutely love the family to death. appreciate everything that Ken Block has done for me in my career. I mean, at one point I was getting packages of DC shoes and swag in the mail every couple of months, you know. Just an amazing, amazing guy. I don't know. I mean, I've told this story about Ken Block in my career many times. You know, it's there out in the internet if you ever want to hear it. But, you know, having interviewed Ken countless times, there was one interview that stood out in my mind. It was my best Ken Block interview. It was the interview everybody went to me and said, how did you get Ken to open up? How did you get Ken to talk about that? Well, two reasons. Number one, I had that built-in relationship with Ken. Ken knew I wouldn't ask questions that would put him in a bad position or they were a loaded question. Ken knew I'd protect him, and I do that with all my guests, not just Ken, with everybody. But, you know, and we'd also had at that point 7-8 years of friendship. You know, so we had built a rapport. You know, when you know somebody and you really know them, you open up more than you do with somebody that you don't know. Ken and I knew each other. Number two, I believe he was in Ibiza at the time when he did this. I did this in the morning on the West Coast. It was evening in Ibiza. And he was also on vacation with his family. And that was the type of guy Ken was. He took time from his vacation in Ibiza with his family to do an hour-long interview with me. And I appreciate that, you know. But he was in Ibiza, and it was evening, and everybody goes, how'd you get that interview? How'd you get that interview? Well, Ken had been drinking wine all day. So Ken opened up a little bit more than probably Ken should have. And off the air, after it was all said and done, Ken laughed. And he goes, yeah, I probably said some things I shouldn't. It's like, you want me to trim him? He goes, not you. Just roll with it. You know, there's that too. But out of all my Ken Block interviews, this was my favorite. You know, obviously the one I did for my 100th show, you should go back and listen to. I had him and I had Greg Godfrey sitting down at Ken's shop in Park City. And those two talking legendary stories together, holy crap, was it epic. So, yes, that one was pretty amazing as well. But this one's got to be my favorite. It talks about marketing, his mind. Man, I think you get a little bit behind the veil of Ken Block with this one. And so we're going to take a short commercial break. Yeah, got to do that. This is a show. When we get done with that, we're going to roll with Ken Block for about an hour. And this is my favorite Ken Block interview ever that I've done. So, you know, and then I'll come back and wrap the show up at the end. But, man, I know the family's been bombarded. The team's been bombarded. But I just, you know, I just want to say, if any of them are listening, any of them ever hear this, man, I love you guys. I loved Ken. I did so much for my career, and truly, truly am thankful, not only for what he did for his career, but, you know, that I got to know the guy behind the scenes. And let me tell you, the guy behind the scenes, you know, every kid in the country's had his posters on their wall, probably had Ken Block shoes, you know, and everything else. But, you know, the biggest thing that I can say is that I got to know Ken the man, and that guy. You know, it's not often that your heroes live up to the hype. Ken most definitely was one of those guys. So, yeah, we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with this Ken Block interview right here on the General Tire Jim Beaver Show. General Tire delivers for whatever life brings your way. General Tire's Grabber X3 all-season mud terrain tire offers aggressive styling and is engineered for durability with innovative performance features that are ready to carry you through extreme mud, dirt, and rock-covered terrain. For extreme traction that's ready for anything and rugged styling to match, look no further than the Grabber X3. General Tire delivers. Check out GeneralTire.com today. General Tire, official tire of The Jim Beaver Show.
Conditions off the pavement are always changing, so why settle for a light bar that just turns on and off? The Rigid Adapt is a revolutionary new light bar that will automatically select from 8 beam patterns that range from a widespread 90-degree flood to a 15-degree spot based on your vehicle's speed. Try that with your knockoff light bar. A dash-mounted controller allows the user to toggle between adaptive mode. beam patterns, and RGBW accent lighting. With Adapt, it's easier than ever to own the night.
Don't just shred your way through any off-road rugged terrain. Get into gear with GSP XTV and let us redefine your adventure. The GSP advantage of quality and performance sets a standard for UTV axles. We strive to provide premium ATV and UTV axles to keep you shreddy ready. Kick up some dirt and get in the driver's seat with GSP XTV. With over 35 years of experience, drive with a company you can trust. Drive with GSP. For more information, please visit us at gspxtv.com today. Dig what you're hearing? Well, do us a favor. Head over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe to the General Tire Jim Beaver Show with Brittany Cardone and catch all of our back episodes. All right, got my good friend Ken Block here, and I don't know, where are we talking at? You're Ibiza, right?
Yeah, I am on the lovely Spanish island of Ibiza. I'm up in a nice villa overlooking some beautiful coastline in the city of San Antonio and watching the sun go down. It's a pretty nice little vacation spot between two of our races here. One, we had a week and a half ago in France, and then this weekend we have Barcelona. So really good to be able to have my family over here and enjoy some time between races.
Yeah, you're like full-blown expatriate status this year almost, man. How has that been running World Rallycross? I mean, it's definitely a change of pace from, the stuff you've done the past couple of years with GRC.
Yeah, it's actually been really amazing. And I actually have spent a ton of time in Europe, when I was racing the WRC a couple of years ago. But that's when my kids were a lot younger, and now they're starting to get older. So it's a little bit easier in some ways and harder in others. But it's been really fun. Luckily, my wife really likes to travel and handles all the travel and planning and all that stuff really well. So we've been really enjoying it. We've been kind of all over the place this year because we've had races in Norway and England and Germany and Canada. So it's been kind of crazy popping all over the place, but really been enjoying it, enjoying the race series. The FIA World Rallycross Series is just put together exceptionally well, great level of competition, and just been having a blast this year.
Yeah. I mean, and I look at the list, and obviously, you've got your teammate Backrud, yourself. I mean, but guys like Petter and Sebastian Loeb and, and then even, hardcore rally guys. I mean, you've got Teamer and, and Toppy. And I'm just looking down the list, and I mean, talk about some stout competition. I mean, the past couple of years in Red Bull GRC, as far as I'm concerned, you were the front runner. You were the guy to beat. I mean, you look at lap times, and I don't care about the point standings. I mean, you were that guy. You were the one with the target on your back, and World Rallycross, man, the competition level is just insane. I mean, you're up there fighting for podiums, but there's a bunch of other guys, right there breathing down your neck also.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big reason why I went to switch over to World Rallycross is the fact that, some of the biggest names in the sport really are there with, factory backed cars, from several other manufacturers. And, you've got two former WRC champions there with Loeb and Petter Solberg. So it really is a well put together series. The weekends of racing are really good and really entertaining. And the competition level is just super high. So I'm really stoked to be racing there. I've struggled this year because we have a brand new car, but I have the talent and the desire to be at the top. I came here with my Fiesta a couple of years ago and got a third and a fourth. But this year I've only gotten 1/3 out of, I think, 8 events. So it's a very high level of competition, and it's fun to compete at that level. But for me this year, it's been a bit of a struggle just because we're developing a brand new race car, but we are getting there. So it's going really well in that side of things.
Yeah. How has it been for you this year? I mean, I was looking back, and, I've followed your career for, I don't know how long now. And I think, last time I think you had a teammate was maybe Atco back at like WRC Mexico a few years back or something like that. I mean, how was it this year for you full time to take on to take on a teammate. I mean, how's the adjustment been with the team there and the crew and everything else, adding a second car into the mix?
It's been amazing. Yeah. Over the years with Finnegan Racing, we've only had some guys on just for one-off events, like Ryan Turk last year for Jim Grid driving the Escort, and Chris Atkinson at WRC Mexico. So we've enjoyed having those people as part of the team. But until this year, we've never had, a goal to go out and have a team effort to try and win, a title in one of these series. But especially in FIA World Rallycross, you have the driver's title, but you also have the team title up for grabs too. So it's nice to be able to race for two different FIA World titles. So when we set out to set this deal up, we really wanted to be able to go out and do the best job we possibly could, as a team with a factory deal, and be able to do it, with the best setup possible as a team to try and get both championships. So it's really cool. I'm stoked to have Andreas as a teammate. He's a really good dude, really talented. He meshes really well with, all my guys. So it's been, a really, really good first part of this year, and we're looking forward to many years going on to have a team running like this.
Yeah, well, and the thing about Backert is I've got to know him the past couple of years and done some interviews and stuff like that, and had a few drinks with him a couple of times. And I got to tell you, he's a personality. I know people here in the States, they might not know the name well, but in Europe, man, the guy has a legit fan following. I mean, the whole term Backert Blue is it's insane. I mean, this guy, it wasn't like you pulled a no name out of nowhere. I mean, he's legit talent, but he's got quite the fan following over there in Europe.
Yeah, he's the great thing that I really like about Andreas is he's a really good kid, comes from a great family, and he's worked really hard to be where he's at. Started in karting, came up into rallycross, did the two-wheel drive championships, and he worked really hard at home to find sponsors to support him. And not only did he work with those sponsors and local people, but he really developed relationships with these people and built a following of fans from his local town of Bergen, Norway. And then that's just kind of grown and grown. So I'm really proud of the dude because he's really worked hard from like the base grassroots part of motorsport to build up now to a factory-backed driver. It's extremely, extremely cool. And I'm stoked to be able to, in my own team, be able to reward someone like this, because it's great to be able to, support somebody that's put themselves through all that to get to this highest level.
Yeah. Well, and talking about you and your background, I mean, as far as, your brand and that, I mean, I look at a few guys that probably in the U.S. could make that successful transition to World Rallycross and bring your there's a lot of guys that are well known in the States, but not on a global scale. And I mean, I seriously, I think on two fingers, I would say you and Travis Pastrana are maybe the two guys that could really pull off a full, effort in World Rallycross. I mean, from a brand standpoint, I mean, how has that been for the Ken Block brand and Hoonigan and Monster Energy? I mean, actually going to Europe and being able to take this thing globally,
Well, I guess for me, it genuinely is a dream come true. I mean, when I started with Ford back in 2010, one of the big reasons why I partnered with them is that they were a brand that wanted me to go and do as many things globally. The funding was coming from the States for the sponsorship, but they wanted me to go out and do as much as I could in Europe, in Asia, so that we could kind of take what we're doing and really continue to make it a global thing. So, that was really quite successful with not only racing World Rallycross, but then, doing all the videos and everything that we did because there really was genuinely a global reach. And now, as we continue to move forward, going back and racing, the FIA World Rallycross, and going to the factory level sponsorship with them and with a teammate, a much bigger team. It's been really genuinely, one of the coolest experiences for me that I think is possible, because in the past, like when I raced WRC, well, I was just a sponsored American driver that was, paying M Sport to run a car there. I wasn't on the factory team. I didn't have the same equipment as the factory drivers, wasn't getting all the testing and development and all that sort of stuff, but now I'm the factory team. My team's the number one team in rallycross for Ford, and we're, got Ford Performance, designing, a lot of the car, from the aero to the engine to, general vehicle dynamics, and doing all the analytics of testing and all that sort of stuff. So, man, it's really, like I said, it's dream come true type stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really genuinely one of the luckiest race car drivers in the world that, I've got an amazing race program that's completely factory backed. And on top of that, I have an amazing set of sponsors that want me to go out and have fun and do fun and creative things with my race cars and projects around the race cars. And the fact that I get to do, a Gymkhana video or two a year, which is, just extremely fun with the car. It's one of those careers that's seriously like, if you could write down on a piece of paper, what do you want as a dream career as a race car driver? Well, I'm kind of living it. So I'm super appreciative of that, and super appreciative that I have a global fan base and that people like and appreciate, what I do around the world with, making the videos and racing these amazing cars, and the fans follow me through the ups and the downs, and it's something that I really genuinely appreciate.
Yeah. Is there ever a point too? Because I know you personally on a personal level, but I know you've been the guy that in the past. I mean, you were behind the scenes, and and I want to get into kind of the formation of DC and things like that. But you were the guy behind the scenes, kind of pulling the strings. I mean, was there a point where it was weird for you to make that transition from the guy behind the scenes pulling the strings and building these brand name athletes to now all of a sudden, hey, I'm the brand name athlete here? Like, how was that transition for you? Because it had to have been weird to kind of flip roles,
Yeah, no, that was genuinely weird at one point. Because when I did DC, Damon and I both were behind the scenes kind of guys, and we really liked that. We liked having the athletes be the center stage of the brand, and it wasn't really till towards the end that we kind of got a bit better known as the guys behind the brand. But really, we always went on like the tours to Japan and Europe, and we let the athletes be the front of the brand, and we stood behind them and wanted to help and push the marketing and the brand side of things, but it was never about us. So yeah, when I started racing in 2005, I was basically teammates with Travis Pastrana, and raced with him for 4 or 5 years, and really had a good time with that. But I mean, Travis has always just been a huge name, and I was just the guy that was there with him, So we'd go to autograph signings, and of course there's like 14-year-old girls fainting in line waiting to, get an autograph with Travis Pastrana, and I'm just the other dude like at the table, So it was kind of funny to go from the guy that was just racing with Travis Pastrana to then kind of getting more and more known as, the Gymkhana series got bigger and bigger, and, X Games became, a bigger thing with our competitions, and then Rallycross and all that. So to the point where my name became bigger and bigger, and then kids would ask Travis if Travis knew me, which was really funny. So, so it was, it's been a interesting and crazy transition, and actually a bit difficult in ways for me, because I'm actually a fairly reserved person when it comes to like people I don't know. So, I'm trying to then change that to have to be more social with lots of people I don't know, because now there's people approaching me all the time at events and all that sort of stuff, and I have to act a way that's kind of unnatural to me in a way. So it did take, a considerable amount of time for me to be comfortable with that and to be able to, handle all the autograph signings and interviews and appearances and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, and knowing you personally, no, it did for sure, and knowing you personally, it's, I see that, and I know you kind of behind the scenes, and one thing I've always respected, and I know that it's something I've tried to do with my family, but you've really tried to shroud your family kind of away from that. It's, hey, I'm the guy that's out there. You're not one posting pictures of your wife and your kids, and it's not because you don't love them. It's just, it's kind of, you've got your bubble, and you want to keep them in there, and I totally get that, because I'm kind of the same way. And I have a lot of respect for you for doing that, because a lot of guys are out there, they're throwing their kids, and you've kind of been, one of those, if eventually your kids kind of move into that role where they want to be a public figure, that's fine, but you're not going to push them out there into that,
Yeah. And the family to me is, I really love having an amazing family, but for me, that's my private life. That's what I do away from the racing and public life. So I want to keep that to ourselves, and also another thing too is, as an athlete, I want the fans to see the cool stuff that I do. And, as we travel the world and race these amazing cars and do cool things with our sponsors, that's what I want those fans to see me represented by, not necessarily, that I took my kids to dinner. Not that taking my kids to dinner is any less important to me, but it isn't necessarily, I don't want to shove that down my fans' throats every day. I just don't see a need for it. So, for me, it's kind of a twofold thing. It's a bit, that I like to keep my private life very private, but at the same time too, I want to show the fans and entertain the fans with the awesome stuff that I do get to do as a race car driver.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to the beginning, because I know these are some of the questions. I don't know how many times I've interviewed you at this point. I'm sure at some point you're like, man, borrowing a license plate from this guy like 6 or 7 years ago, I never knew I'd be roped into so many damn things, right? But no, seriously though, I mean, going back to the beginning, I mean, I know. It's funny because you mentioned DC clothes, and then before that I know you had like 8-ball and drawers, and I laughed because I had a pair of drawer shorts, and it was one of my favorite pairs of shorts ever, and I was so pissed when the things just finally fell apart. But kind of take me back to the beginning, because one thing I've always respected about you is you're self-built. It's not like you came from wealth and you bought some company, and I mean, it was a ground up grind to where you're at, and it was literally using your mind and some outside the box marketing techniques to kind of get where you were. I mean, or where you are. I mean, how did DC and that whole movement, I mean, form, and even before that, some of your previous brands?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. Like, I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding, and I had friends that were pros in those sports, and like, I wanted to be a pro in one of those sports, but I just did it for a bunch of years and realized, man, I just didn't have the talent to be pro. I was pretty good at stuff, but I never had that extra level that would, that the pros have. And so at a certain point when I was, I think 19 or 20, 20 or 21, I just really came to the realization, like, hey, I love these sports, but it's never, the pro level's not achievable for me, so I need to find some other way to be involved. And so, Damon and I, met in a junior college, and we just clicked really well. Sorry to say his full name, Damon Way. And we started off, doing some small brands together, and I was literally screen printing T-shirts at this junior college in North San Diego. And it just, we worked really hard at it, and it grew and grew and grew. And eventually we started DC, and that grew and grew and grew. And it really came from you know, a lot of hard work and dedication, you know, and a bit of luck, and really just trying to use our talents, you know, the best that we possibly could, and working with good, smart people. And we were very lucky that Damon and I really got along exceptionally well with, you know, a lot of pro skateboarders, and they wanted to work with us and help us grow this thing. And it just, you know, was a really amazing experience. I'm very lucky to have some natural talent with a few things, and ended up being a very good industrial designer and basically an advertising director or creative director. And yeah, Damon and I just kind of worked our asses off and ended up with a really successful brand, and eventually sold it. So I am very, very appreciative that we were able to do that. That industry is exceptionally hard to do that, and I'm proud that I grew up skateboarding, and that I was able to take some of my talents and help create a brand that you know, grew to basically 500 million in sales. That was after we sold it, but you know, it was really cool being involved with something like that, and seeing it really grow and flourish.
Yeah, was it a little bittersweet when you finally signed the final paperwork, you know, over to Quicksilver? I mean, was there a part of you that, you know, just felt, I mean, it was your baby, right?
Oh yeah, no, it was incredible growing that thing and growing it to the size that we did. But I mean, as far as businesses go and being able to have the opportunity to sell to a Wall Street company, it's kind of like hitting the lottery. So we were really, really appreciative that we were able to, you know, sell it and, you know, take the chips off the table for all the hard work that we did. Both Damon and I stayed on with the brand for about 4 years afterwards to help continue with its growth and guidance. And that was really cool. And, yeah, but now it's kind of crazy to see, you know, where it's gone and what they're doing with it. And people ask me, well, aren't you disappointed about this or that? And I tell them, no, I have no regrets. You know, it's not my company anymore. It's not been my company for over 10 years now. And, you know, I would have done different things with it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, now you've got Hoonigan, and I mean, I know, you know, Brian and you know, the guys over there. It's crazy because you know, I've been friends with them since the start. I mean, I remember the first couple of T-shirts were sold like on a Facebook page. You know, they didn't have much of a following, and now just to see Hoonigan, I mean, you guys have millions of followers, and you know, and I mean, how's business over there? I just see the website and the growth, and I get updates from Brian once in a while when we're talking and things like that. But it's been a while since we have. But I mean, it just seems like things are growing hand over fist. I mean, I go into a mall, and you know, I'm in a Tilly's or wherever, and I'm always looking, and you know, up pops Hoonigan shirts. I mean, to me, that's really cool to see a brand that literally has grown from scratch and nothing, and here it is again. I mean, it's, you know, it's there, and you know, I don't see an end in sight for sure.
Yeah, that's been really cool. I mean, we started Hoonigan because, you know, between Brian and I, we had so many creative ideas to do with, you know, my career and motorsports in general, and we just didn't really have an outlet for them. And there was only so much I could do with DC. The first, you know, 5 Gymkhana videos were with DC, but at the end of the day, you know, those were big, you know, high value productions that, you know, DC just was spending too much for the size of the business they had with motorsports. You know, they're a skateboard brand, so it's kind of hard to spend that much money, you know, on motorsports. So, you know, it's stuff like that we just needed a better outlet to do things with, not only, you know, for videos and general marketing, things like that, but even just simple T-shirts, like the idea of like a Tire Slayer shirt. Well, that would have been odd at DC. So Hoonigan gives us a perfect outlet to make fun stuff like that and sell it and have it be a part of, you know, the brand of what we do and what surrounds kind of what I do as a race team. So it's been genuinely really fun. It's been growing quite well. It kind of has a difficult place in retail because there aren't, like motorsport shops like there are skateboard stores. So it is a bit difficult sometimes finding a home for it to be able to sell, but it has, a really good following and continues to grow every year, and really stoked to have it and hopefully continue to grow it on and on.
Yeah. Well, kind of switching gears here a bit. I know, wanted to ask you, this goes back to kind of some marketing and stuff like that. I mean, because, you'd mentioned earlier, about design and having an eye for design. And I know, you're a guy, like I consider, the baseline for everything. I mean, I look at my, my brand, which is infinitely smaller than yours, but, I look at spaces where Ken Block is in, and, it's like, especially on social media, I mean, I get hit with, there's dozens of social media channels that pop up, yearly, but it's where do you invest your time and things like that. And I've always said, like, I kind of watch what Ken Block does, and then, it's like Ken Block goes to Snapchat. Well, I probably should have, be using my Snapchat. You know what I mean? It's things like that. Mm-hmm. But it just seems like going back to, your design and things like that, even your liveries and, and then your ideas. I mean, your mind, to me, it works different. I mean, back to things like, DC Mountain Lab and, and back with DC. I mean, here's this house on a mountain that, became this almost like this sanctuary for snowboarders, and it seems like every time, you take a step, there's most of the time there's a reason behind it. You don't make rash decisions.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I've always really enjoyed the creative side, from skateboarding and snowboarding, and, growing DC, we tried to set the bar just extremely high for everything that we did on the marketing side. So, trying to have the best athletes and have the best videos and the best print ads that go with all these athletes. And, we had some of the best photographers in the industry working for us so that we had, photos on demand that were at this extremely high level. So taking all that experience and all those ideas that we've worked on for years for skateboarding and snowboarding, and then applying them to motorsport, is basically what I've been doing. So where somebody looks at some of the things that we've done and says, well, that Gymkhana video is completely out of the blue and completely unordinary, I look at it and think, well, to me, it's just like a skateboarder video part. We've just done it with a car.
Yeah.
And so the actual way that we put things together and the way that we, find, artists, like Fleet Pantone that did my livery for this year, stuff like that. Really, a lot of that just comes from what I've just done for years and years and years with DC. So in that way, I kind of feel bad sometimes when you realize sort of what my competition is up against, when you have a guy that basically brand directed a company like DC for 10 years, and now I'm doing that huge job, along with a bunch of other very talented people that work for me, for a small motorsports team. So I think that the job that we do with Hoonigan and Hoonigan Racing is by far some of the best, stuff done in the entire world of motorsports. And that's putting us up against, the Ferrari Formula One team. But I take a lot of pride in the fact of what we're able to do with a small, very light, but very smart crew. And we just, set the bar very high and work our asses off, and we make exceptionally good stuff. So we take a huge amount of pride in that.
Yeah. Well, and back there a couple of minutes ago, you mentioned Gymkhana, and that series. And I guess we should touch on the fact that Gymkhana 9 dropped yesterday. I know right before we decided to record, I checked, and I think you're a little over like 2.5 million views in 24 hours. I mean, to me, when you dropped that very first Gymkhana, I know it wasn't on accident, but it was one of those things where, I look at how far this thing spiraled, and what are you, close to 400 million total views now? I mean, you had to have known it was going to be good, but never this good, right?
Yeah, when we made the first one, we knew it was good, and we enjoyed it, But to us, it was all stuff that I knew is possible with an all-wheel drive car, and I'd seen various things like it, before, doing donuts and sliding around, that sort of thing. But that sort of thing had just never been packaged together that well and been presented to the general public. So, I knew that it would have a decent impact, but I had no idea that it would make the impact that it had. And now, almost 10 years later, we have, 400 million views with this series. That's just insane. If you would have told me that 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you. But, it is what it is. We found a niche, and I'm really happy that people have enjoyed watching them. And we have gone out and now made 9 videos of that. And 9 is an insane number to go out and try and make 9 creative projects at this level. But we've had success with every one of them. So I really appreciate that the fans like what we do with these things, and as long as they keep watching, we'll keep making them. So yeah, it's been a fun ride.
So I got to say, Gymkhana 10. I mean, 10's kind of a marquee number, right? I got to say, we're rolling into Gymkhana 10, and I'm assuming that's going to be next year sometime. As a fan of the series, I got to say, what I would love to see is go back to the original location that you filmed Gymkhana 1 and do it all over again. I think it would be kind of just a full circle type of thing for Gymkhana 10. But that's just a fan talking here.
Well, I love that idea, and I've actually had that idea. Unfortunately, El Toro Airfield does not exist in the same form it was when I did that first video. So they've taken down some of the buildings, and there's just more stuff there because there's RV storage on part of that now. It's unfortunate that it just doesn't exist like it did, because I would actually love to do that exact idea, go back and do the original video almost like shot for shot, but with different cars in each scene, each one of the cars that I've used over the years, for different parts of it. But anyway, it's just not possible because the place is just not the same as it was. But believe me, Gymkhana 10, I've already actually been working on it for 6 months now. But, for me, it's an important number, and the fact that I've been doing this for a decade, just absolutely insane. So I really want to make this the craziest, most unique one. So yeah, I'm really happy the way 9 came out, which literally was yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to 10. I want to, make it on a whole different level. So, it should be out probably sometime next year, probably more towards the end of next year. But, we've now put out 2 this year, 8 and 9, both coming out this year. And then that's only because number 8 was actually filmed November last year, but it didn't come out till early part of this year. But yeah, actually this year I've done 3 because Gymkhana 8 came out. I did the London Top Gear piece, the tour piece with Matt LeBlanc, which is basically just an entire Gymkhana video, but for Top Gear. And then we just put out Gymkhana 9. And there's another one on its way too, that'll slightly different version that'll be out in a month or 2 also. So that's 4 in 1 year basically, which is super crazy.
You need to package all this for an iTunes, thing. Just package every Gymkhana together and throw it up on iTunes. And I don't know. I think it'd be cool to have them all in one place and all in one file where I could just hit play on my iPad when I'm laying in bed and watch everything roll through.
Yeah, someday we'll actually do some stuff like that. In the long run, when things kind of slow down for me, we're going to make sort of compilation stuff and documentaries and, like the top 10 ideas and my top 10 favorite tricks. And so we'll kind of do that as I start to slow down in my career, but that's still going to be a little bit. But as long as we can still keep producing good original content, then we'll keep doing that till I run out of ideas, basically.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. How did Gymkhana, obviously scouting locations and then, once you find a good location, going through the permitting process is insane. And then a lot of times you guys are adding to the mix. I mean, things like the Mustang, and those builds. I mean, between the locations and these crazy builds, you've done the Mustang, the Escort. How does all that get put together? I mean, I know you've got a team of people, but how do you go from concept to to actually having a physical location I guess approved and permitted, and here we are, and these cars. I mean, you come up with crazy builds. I mean, how does that go from concept to implementation?
A lot of it is just kind of what fits and when and what sponsors want and that sort of thing. So, I've got a ton of ideas. I've got concept drawings for 4 different vehicles right now, and we have things concepted out for all sorts of locations around the world. So, like this time, like for this Gymkhana 9, it was Ford and Hoonigan and Forza that were all the people behind it. Well, Ford wanted the Focus RS. Okay, brand new race car. Yep, plug that in. Forza wanted Australia because the new Horizons game is based in Australia. And of course, Hoonigan wanted some really aggressive action done more simple. So we take all those things and put it in a box and say, okay, well, great. We got to get the Focus, when is the proper time frame to get the Focus into Australia? We work that out. And then Australia, of course, we start working with Australia to figure out where and how and what we can film. And then for the production on the look and how we wanted everything to happen, well, that's when Brian starts working with his creative crew to figure out, what they want to produce and how they want to produce it. So all these things start to come together, but then we get wrenches thrown in, like the Australian government doesn't like me and doesn't want me hooning on their streets of Sydney. So basically, we got banned from Australia. We weren't able to do what we wanted because basically the authorities in Sydney said, nope, we don't want you here. We won't let you go above the speed limit, even in permitted areas. And we basically don't want you here because it promotes hooning. So... And I understand Australia does have a hooning problem, but they don't stop films from being produced there, that have murders in it because that people get murdered in Australia. To me, it's the same thing. So anyway, we had to find a new location, and we ended up in Buffalo, New York. Mainly because they had some very good pieces of old industry with the train station and old Ford plant and cool bridges and stuff. And so we switched gears and ended up in Buffalo, New York, and were able to produce exactly what we wanted to produce. And that's how we ended up with Gymkhana 9. So I know I kind of answered your question in a long form answer, but that's generally how it happens. We have there may be desires or needs, like on my part or the team's part, to do a particular thing, like I wanted to do the Mustang, and then we partner then with the right sponsors that have similar goals, or they may have like a product launch a particular year or something like that. So, for instance, this year, Can-Am was launching their new X3, and we have Toyo launching a new tire. So we work with them to figure out marketing, and then we go out and do it with their backing. So it's a pretty fun process. It can get frustrating and difficult at times, but a lot of times we're able to figure out solutions and be able to do what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, and I know I've been, at HQ a few years ago, and I mean, how often are you guys in meetings? I mean, you guys have so many projects going on, and I mean, it's got to be sometimes just daunting to be able to keep track of everything you've got in all different areas and corners of the world, and projects going here and there and every which where. And man, it's a full-time job, man.
Yeah, and it is insane, the amount of work that we get done and the level of what we get done and the exposure that we get out of stuff. And it's really, I got to credit it to like a small group of really talented people, from guys at Hoonigan like Kurt and Brian to, guys that work for me like Matt and Ron to an amazing team director, Derek Dauncey. It's like, without these guys, we wouldn't be able to be so light on our feet and be able to get so much stuff done and also be able to adjust to issues as quick as possible. So I really give a lot of credit to, just being able to work with some incredibly talented people.
Yeah. Well, I gotta ask, and I gotta ask a question for the stage rally fans. And I know the reasoning why you're running World Rallycross, and I know deep down if Ken Block could do anything in the world he wanted to be run full time in stage rally. That being said, I know that the HFHV is it currently for sale, or did it sell? I don't know. I know it was listed at one point, but at some point in your career, as as we come full circle here, are we going to see you back on the stages in some type of vehicle?
Yeah, I'm a stage rally driver at heart. I have this great opportunity right now to race World Rallycross at the highest level with factory backing, so that's what I'm doing. But at some point, I will come back and race stage rally. But unfortunately, stage rally in the States isn't maybe at the level that I would like to see that, which is a bit unfortunate. And I mean that in a nice way. There's great events there, but there isn't, a great amount of people running with the best cars at the highest level. So it's a bit unfortunate to see. I hope that stage rally in the States grows. I hope that the competition cars grow, and I also hope that the rallies in the States actually adopt some world level classes like R5 that people can buy and race and all race at the same level. So, one of the reasons why I've had the HFHV for sale is it's a very expensive one-off race car that's meant to race in the Rally America rules, but the Rally America rules are just so open that it becomes just a money war for trying to win the series. So I don't want to race in a series like that. I want to race in a series with some really good strict classes so we can all go out and race on a good level playing field. And I hope that happens someday in Rally America so that we can go back and enjoy doing that. Otherwise, for me, the WRC, I'd love to go back and race some WRC events, but, they take such a big commitment of, changing your sleep time over and then a week's worth of event because of, a couple of days of recce and shakedown and then 3 days of racing the event. It's a huge commitment compared to racing in rallycross, which is only 2 days. So sorry, but your stage rally question is actually really complicated.
Yeah.
It's not a very easy answer. The easiest answer I could tell you is I would love to go down and race New Zealand, race the national championship down there with like an R5 car, which fits into their regulations quite well. And some of the best roads in the world with a really well-run championship and a lot of great competitors. And that's something I will genuinely do at some point down the road.
Yeah. Stage rally in the U.S., I think, man, it's the easiest way to put it is I don't know at this point. There's so much good that happens, and then there's so much that I don't know. It's like you said, though, we do have some of the most amazing stages. It's just getting everything put in order, and sometimes it seems like it's, I don't know, wishful thinking. But, yeah, moving on. I know. Obviously, you've kind of been a voice of an industry. Whether it be with DC or now moving into things. I just kind of wanted to get your feel on because I know you still have the pulse. You still got friends there. I mean, just action sports, X Games as a whole. I mean, we've seen this huge roller coaster. Up and down. Where it hits peaks and valleys. I mean, where do you see the industry at right now? And I know what Rob's done with Street League has been absolutely just insane for skate skateboarding. But, how do you see action sports in the industry and X Games as a whole right now? Because I know X Games is going through its own, changes. But as a guy that's been there, you've been on both the athlete side with X Games and, and then the industry side with DC. I mean, where do you see us as a whole right now as far as action sports go?
Well, I think it's a really interesting time in action sports. And I mean, I came up, with our businesses when, skateboarding and snowboarding really thrived and grew to a really massive scale. And, I think X Games was a really big part of that. And, and then all the products from skateboarding and snowboarding, like basically going mass market into the malls because, before when I started with, DC, like those sort of retailers and those sort of products weren't necessarily available at mass market in the mall. So it's been interesting for me from, the early 90s through the, mid to late 2000s to watch and see all that growth and see the success that the industry had, that the brands had, and that the athletes have had. But now, kind of going on, I don't know, what is it? X Games has got to be into its like second decade, things have been around for a long time now. And I think that no matter what sort of industry there is, things can become stale, things can sort of get oversold in the malls and all that sort of thing, and you're going to have these peaks and valleys. So it's kind of interesting to see because, not only have we seen, in our lifetime, like the rise of the X Games and the rise of these big athletes from skateboarding and snowboarding and motocross and all that, but we're also seeing in conjunction with that the rise of the internet and social media, which has genuinely changed all sports.
Yeah.
And so with that, you're seeing then lower numbers of attendance of live events. You look in baseball stadiums nowadays, a lot of the teams can barely sell out half the stadium. And it's a really big change in how everyone absorbs media and how everyone, follows, different sports. Because when, 20 years ago, if you wanted to watch skateboarding, you had to figure out what time that a TV station might have something on. And for a TV station to actually even broadcast anything skateboarding, it was very, very seldom. So then you had to go to the skate shop and buy the videos to watch. And consuming media was so much different 20 or 30 years ago. Well, today, the average kid picks up their smartphone and says, I want to see, Nigel Houston's part from whatever, and it's right there on YouTube. It's like and if it doesn't instantly pop up because their service is crappy, well, they're mad, So so the way that we consume media today is just so completely different that it's kind of affecting everything from the sport itself to how the pros get popular, how they're successful, to what's happening to the brands, or the brands, some of these older brands, are they adapting? And you have newer brands that are starting, that are coming up with totally different sort of business models that are succeeding because they're understanding the current business. And the market today for all this stuff is really intriguing to me because it is so dynamically different than it was 20 years ago. And it's still changing year to year now. So I find it very kind of entertaining to watch all this stuff. And I watch it a bit from the distance. I don't deal with kind of the numbers of, these things entail nowadays. But it's kind of just crazy to me to sit back and watch some things that I think would be really successful, and hear some of the struggle stories from some of the, the older brands, and including Quicksilver that's gone bankrupt, a year ago. And it's really kind of crazy to me, but that's, what the brands are having to deal with this new modern age.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the TV, and I've always said, like, even my daughter, she's on YouTube watching just all kinds of random stuff, you know, and kids nowadays can't appreciate. I remember back in the 80s, and I think the first time skateboarding I ever remember on TV was Nickelodeon had something called Skate TV. And it was a short-lived series, like on Saturdays or something. But I remember as a kid, like I was always skating. But that came on, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, and I was so pissed if I missed that 30-minute airing of it. Because there was no DVR, you just flat missed it, and they didn't do re-airs. I just remember as a kid I was so pissed because it was like the one time a week that I could watch skateboarding on TV was a 30-minute window, and if I missed it, I was so pissed. And I'm like, kids can't appreciate the way it used to be. I mean, I used to have one or two skate videos or snowboarding videos, and man, those things got on replay to the point where that they didn't even work in the VCR anymore. And I'm like, man, kids nowadays, they don't know how easy they've got it, I guess. I don't want to sound like the old guy, you know, but it's so different the way people consume content.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing, too, is the funny thing, how I even related directly to my own life was that I was such a rally fan when I was a kid, you know, that when I got my own car keys and was driving down roads, like I mimicked that driving style, like on twisty roads. But as I think back on it, I can barely think of how I even saw a rally. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. Like, so I guess I saw, like, you know, ABC's Wide World of Sports or something showing Pikes Peak and, like, some highlights from Europe. And you know, and I looked at all the car magazines back then, and I'm sure I saw, you know, race coverage of WRC and stuff like that. But it was so hard to see it at that time. You would have to buy some random VHS tape from Europe to be able to see rally when I was a kid. You know, but today, like literally, my son says, I want to see rally crashes. Boom, like 2 words in YouTube, and I have 50 videos that instantly come up that he will click through 5 of them and see stuff I would have dreamt about as a kid. And like, that access to information and highlights and videos and sports and stuff like that, to me is just such the coolest thing of our modern age. And it's really just amazing to me, you know, what's available and then also what these kids' perception is for the future. Like the bar is so high for some of these sports and things that people do because you're like, oh, I want to be a freestyle moto rider. Okay, well, you have to learn the basics, right? But then you open up YouTube and you see, you know, Josh Sheehan doing a double backflip with a variation in the middle of it. It's like, oh my God, like it's so insane the level of what you're able to see.
Yeah.
Well, so anyway, it's going to be interesting to see kind of, you know, how things develop, you know, in the next couple of decades, not only how we consume media, but then how it affects the sports we watch. Because nowadays I turn on the Olympics and I'm like, how do people watch this? Like, this is so incredibly boring, most of it. I like, you know, certain sports in the Olympics, but there's so much of it, you know, these sports that have been around hundreds of years that in today's standards are really strange to see them still showcased in a place where people can win a gold medal. But that's just the way that it's been for so long. But now things are changing.
Yeah, which is funny because, you know, I know skateboarding's coming to the Olympics in 4 years in Japan, but, you know, you've had something like BMX racing that, you know, I don't watch BMX racing. You know, normally I'll watch a street contest on TV, but in the Olympics, I would watch BMX racing, and that's something you've got to go to their website and watch on the live stream. They don't even put it on television. You know, and I'm like, you're looking for the younger demographic, you know, like put that out there. Nobody wants to watch, you know, the 3-meter springboard or the rhythmic gymnast. You know, to me, I'm just like, you know, you're losing your audience here. You know, what are you going after, the 70+ crowd, or do you want the under 35? You know, I don't know. I think it's just a fight. You know, I see a change, you know, like you said, in media and everything else, and it's going to be interesting, especially I think the next 5 years, how things, come around. But that being said, I mean, social media's growth has just become insane. I know, like you, I mean, you ever feel like there was a spot where you were, you have, I think I pulled, and it was like just between Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, like over 9 million followers. I mean, do you think at some point you were just right there at the right point, the right time when social media started to take off, and then you were able to capitalize on it with your unique content and things like that, and really, grow things?
Yeah, yes, we definitely kind of had a formula with the stuff that we wanted to show of my, racing and personal life. And, once again, I come from a background of marketing, and I was a brand director. So being able to kind of direct content and fun photos and cool behind the scenes of a race car driver, that comes pretty easy for me. So we're able to produce, I think, content that a lot of the fans like to see. And at the end of the day, I know that the fans are what make me a sponsorable driver. So I try to constantly put up things that I think that the fans would like to see. So anyway, I think it's all those things kind of together that make this, a popular formula. And I can't tell you how much I genuinely appreciate that I've got those fans. And now that we've, got those fans, we try to continue to keep the level extremely high with the content we put up, from the Gymkhana videos to, trips to Lake Powell to, having the best photographers that shoot for us, at the World Rallycross races. So, yeah, I don't, believe me, that wasn't an easy process, but, it is pretty crazy. I mean, I just noticed this morning that we ticked over to 3.1 million followers on Instagram, which is just absolutely insane to me when, someone like Sebastian Loeb or Petter Solberg, who are world champions, don't have, even 10% of that. So it's pretty wild to me, but it's something that I genuinely appreciate, the fans that like to follow me and what we do, and super stoked to have that following, and we'll continue to try and make cool content for people to follow along.
Yeah. All right. Before we let you go, two questions, kind of quick hits, but on the social media front, obviously, you guys kill it. I enjoy, I've done interviews before where they ask me, who are your favorite people to follow on social media, and Ken Block is number one. I love seeing the unique content and where you're at and things like that. But, give me 3 people or 3 accounts that you enjoy following on social media. I mean, that you like the content they're producing and things like that. I mean, I want to get in Ken Block's head. What are you looking at in social media?
Wow, that's a tough question.
How about 3 brands that you like the direction they're doing? I mean, this is a tough one.
Of course.
I think I stumped Ken Block. Like, this is a first in 5 years. I have got you speechless here. Wow, this is. Well,
the funny thing about it though is like I look at Facebook every day on my computer.
Yeah.
I look at Instagram every day on my phone, and then Snapchat I look at a couple times a day on my phone. Twitter, literally, I look at like maybe once a week. I genuinely don't like Twitter that much. I think it's good to get information across and have conversations, but I like rich content. I like videos and photos and that sort of thing. So, but so there's just different things that I like in different areas. Like on Instagram, I like some of the really funny, like meme style accounts, like Tank Sinatra, that has a genuinely funny, sarcastic sense of humor and comes across really well in memes, But, if I'm looking at Facebook, I like a different set of humorous things there, like, Jerry of the Day or whatever that has funny ski crashes, but so it comes from sort of different dynamics of things that I want to look at, and somebody like Larry Chen, in motorsports, or Mike Blayback in and skateboarding. They're photographers that are extremely talented, that are traveling the world and seeing cool things. So I love to see their worlds through their eyes. So those are, two guys that I like to follow. So yeah, that's a very loaded question because there's different things that I like to look at, and there's different ways that I like to follow different people, and not everyone is good at all mediums. Like someone like Diplo, I like to follow on like Snapchat, because I love to see the behind the scenes of him producing music or playing crazy shows in Jerusalem or Berlin. So yeah, that's a tough question.
Yeah. Well, here's another one. This one will, I don't know, might be a little bit easier, but 4 or 5 years out, where do we see Ken Block? I mean, we going to see you on the U.S. ping pong team in Tokyo, or are we going to see you still in a race car?
No, you'll still see me in a race car. I will keep doing this as long as I have the talent to race at the highest level, and when I don't have that talent anymore, well, I'll slow down and do it in some other form that's fun also. So I'm extremely lucky that I've got amazing sponsors, and I get to drive some of the most fun cars in the world, and I'm going to do it as long as I possibly can. So I work really hard to stay healthy and keep alert and keep in shape, and as long as I can keep reacting the way that I can and be able to compete with, guys like Andreas, well, then I will keep doing it. So, yeah, so I still see myself racing at a pretty high level in 5 years.
I see what you've done and how far you've gotten, and I'm excited for the next 5 years, man. I think it's going to be really interesting. I see the program. I mean, the level you've taken it to, and I'm pretty excited to see. I think definitely the World Rallycross wins are going to come sooner rather than later, and pumped to follow along, my friend.
Well, thanks very much. Well, thanks for having me on, and good luck with the program, and talk to you sometime soon.
All right, sounds good, Ken. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Thank you, buddy.
General Tire offers a wide variety of options that are designed to deliver for whatever life brings your way. Whether you have a truck, car, or SUV, General Tire delivers for whatever you drive. From the long-lasting all-season Altimax RT43 to the aggressive all-terrain Grabber ATX, General Tire covers on-road performance, off-road capability, and durability. General Tire delivers. For more information, drive over to GeneralTire.com. General Tire, official tire of The Jim Beaver Show. When looking for a new wheel for your off-road vehicle, car, truck, or UTV, the choice is easy. You choose what the pros use. Rob McCachran, Keegan Kincaid, and myself, Jim Beaver, all exclusively use Vision Wheel, whether we're dominating Baja, taking the cup at Crandon, or shredding UTVs. Vision Wheel's trend-setting designs and durability will set you apart from the competition and your friends. Check out visionwheel.com or @VisionWheel on social media to learn more.
Life is all about sound, the sound of sports, the sound of the racetrack, and the sound of your vehicle. Don't drive around listening to this. Drive around listening to the sound of performance. Gibson Performance. Gibson Performance Exhaust is the company who can turn this into this. Remember that life is all about sound, and Gibson Exhaust is the sound of performance. Check out your next catback exhaust system, headers, muffler, or UTV exhaust at GibsonPerformance.com and get more power and more sound.
Social media? Yeah, we've got that. Jim Beaver 15 on all major platforms, and Jim Beaver Show, JB15 Group, and B Cardone 15 on the gram.
Well, welcome back here to the General Tire Jim Beaver Show, and yes, that was my good friend Ken Block, and my favorite interview I did with Ken. So thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, I mean, normally I'd give you the spiel with all our partners and stuff like that, but I just don't feel like doing that today. So alls I will tell you is, man, we've lost a couple great ones this week in Ken Block and Robbie Pierce. Man, thinking about those guys, everything they did for my career. All I can tell you is, I mean, even with Robbie, I talked with him a couple days prior to his passing, and you never know when we're going to lose somebody. So definitely give him a hug, tell him thank you. Give him a high five. whatever you got to do, but definitely reach out. If you haven't talked to somebody in a while, reach out. You never quite know, when they're going to go to the other side. So, yeah, we're going to sign off. Obviously this is my Remembrance of Ken Block. Got another one with Robbie Pierce. Check that one out as well. And we'll see you next time right here on the General Tire Jim Beaver Show.
That's a wrap for this edition of the General Tire Jim Beaver Show with Brittany Cardone. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and follow Jim Beaver 15, B Cardone 15, and Jim Beaver Show on social media. We're also on the web. Hit us up at jimbeaver15.com for all the latest. We'll see you next time.